5 a.m. in New York City. Good morning. I'm Vonnie Quinn with your Bloomberg Brief. Here's what you need to know. Japan's ruling coalition collapses. Japanese assets whipsaw in a major setback for the new LDP leader. Israel's cabinet backs the Gaza deal, paving the way for the release of hostages held in Gaza. Futures pointing to gains after maybe a less enthusiastic week. The dollar is snapping its four-day rally. Investors digesting the international headlines. So let's take a look at where they are, because we've had 2 up days and 2 down days this week. Looks like we're headed for another up day. But even without today, we're still higher on the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100 for the week. Russell 2000 futures up 0.4% as well. Perhaps the situation in the US, even though we're into a 10th day of a government shutdown now, doesn't look as bad as it does internationally, in Japan, in France. Let's take a look at yields, because we haven't seen too much movement in yields. We did have that auction. The 10-year still at 4.1131, a tiny bit of flattening. The 30-year coming down below 470, and the 2-year up at 357.85. Gold is also below 4,000, so a little bit of a calmer Friday. And the VIX as well is just a little lower than where it was yesterday. The yen has strengthened just a little bit because it looks like that ruling coalition will not work. And what does that mean for Japanese policy? Certainly, Sanae Takaichi is going to have to rethink her strategy for becoming Prime Minister. But let's get to some individual market movers now, and for that we'll go over to London and Valerie Teitel. Good morning, Valerie.
Good morning, Vonnie. Happy Friday. Let's start with some earnings. Earnings from Levi are disappointing investors. Levi shares down nearly 8% so far in pre-market trade. Now, they did upgrade their full-year guidance, gave a rosy outlook on sales, but it was their warning on their tariff impact which is causing the negative reaction. Their assumption for the tariff rate, the average tariff rate they'll be paying for the rest of the world, other than shipments from China, was notched up to 20%. So investors worried that heading into the holiday season, the Levi's tariff bill could be larger than expected. Let's move on to the tech trade. Applied Digital Materials is also rising after earnings, up nearly 25%. Now, Applied Digital is a company that makes equipment for manufacturing of semiconductors. They're also involved in data center expansion. And the excitement about these results is that they did, yes, beat the revenue estimates, but they also announced a expanded lease agreement with CoreWeave for more compute, and said they secured more funding on that. So a lot of positive stories for Applied Digital. Lastly, let's end in the rare earth space. A lot of speculation on where just perhaps the U.S. government could take its next equity stake. We're seeing critical metals up nearly 14% in pre-market trade. Vonnie, this stock has flown 80% so far this week on speculation it could be the next target of an equity stake by the U.S. government.
Valerie, thank you so much. That is Valerie Teitel. And later this hour, we'll talk tech trade and more with Maria Veitmane. She is Senior Multi-Asset Strategist and Head of Equity Research at State Street Global Markets. And I do want to point out that CCTV is reporting that China is now probing Qualcomm for suspected monopoly behavior. Once again, this is a report coming from CCTV that China is probing Qualcomm for suspected monopoly behavior. We'll keep an eye on Qualcomm shares. Japanese assets, though, whipsawing after Japan's governing coalition failed to overcome differences on political funding regulation, of all things. Joining us now is Bloomberg's Japan economy and government reporter Alistair Gale. Alistair, this is all happening in real time. We're seeing this collapse just occur before our very eyes. What is the latest?
Well, Vonnie, this is a political earthquake in Japan. We've seen the minor party in this coalition decide that they want to pull out. And this is the coalition that's governed Japan for most of the last 26 years. So the breakup is, it seems like it's real. The leader of the larger party, Sanae Takaichi, says she wants to continue talks, wants to find a way to keep the coalition together. But this has big implications for her. We're expecting her to be the next prime minister, but it's really going to make it hard for her to get her policy agenda through. The LDP will be weakened. She'll be a weakened prime minister. So there are many implications here. This is a big deal. And
just for context, I mean, this coalition has been in power for 25 years. This could be a sea change. Who's left to be a junior partner, or are we looking at some other kind of rainbow coalition that doesn't even include the LDP, given that they're losing more and more seats in both chambers?
I think at this point we shouldn't rule anything out. I mean, what we're seeing now is the LDP is looking for potential other partners. I mean, they've been doing this really for the last few days when things have gone south with Komeito. So they'll look for any way they can to hold things together. But what that means is policy compromises. The Takaichi is going to have to take on board some of the policies from other parties. We've seen in, the reaction in markets is very interesting. People have expected her to be very aggressive on sort of pump priming for the economy, but maybe she has to consider other approaches now. So it's a time for compromise. It's a time for horse trading. It's a time that will really test her political skills. And she's only been in this job for less than a week.
She was the presumptive prime minister. Is that for sure to happen now? And what is this Komeito party, the leader being Tetsuo Saito? What do we know about their types of policies?
Komeito is a party which is more focused on social issues. It wants to see more kind of social welfare support. It's been a kind of break on some of the more aggressive economic policies and security policies that the LDP has had over the years. So if that coalition breaks up, then we may see the LDP perhaps move more to the right. There are a few parties that it could do deals with to adopt some of the policies that Takaichi wants to do in terms of stimulus for the economy, tax cuts, that kind of thing. So there's potential for lots of sort of policy implications here. But without Komeito, the problem is that she might struggle to get through that vote to become prime minister. So if that's the case, then she may not even have a chance to get her policies through.
We'll be watching those Japanese assets, the yen strengthening at 152.70 now. That is Bloomberg's Alistair Gale. Thank you. Meanwhile, President Trump says he'll travel to Israel after the Israeli government approved a deal for Hamas to release its remaining hostages in Gaza in exchange for more than 2,000 prisoners. The president spoke about the breakthrough.
Peace in the Middle East. We secured the release of all of the remaining hostages, and they should be released on Monday or Tuesday. Getting them is a complicated process. I'd rather not tell you what they have to do to get them. There are places you don't want to be, but we are getting the hostages back on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, and that'll be a day of joy. I'm going to try and make a trip over. We're going to try and get over there.
Let's bring in now Bloomberg Horizons anchor Jumana Bersecci. So, Jumana, walk us through the latest now that the ceasefire has gone into effect. Have there been any holdouts? Are there any factions, either politically or in the electorate, that don't support this?
There's certainly parts of the electorate and parts of actually the Israeli cabinet who aren't supportive. But overall, though, the cabinet voted to pass phase one of this peace agreement. So it is a remarkable moment. It technically means that the ceasefire will now be implemented, and Israel has 24 hours to withdraw its forces, the IDF, to a pre-agreed line, that yellow line, which still means that they'll maintain control of about 53% of the Gaza Strip. Once that has happened, there's a 72-hour window for Hamas to begin mobilizing to release the hostages. There are 48 hostages in total, 20 of them still thought to be alive, 28 who would have died in captivity. And that would happen alongside the exchange of Palestinian prisoners and detainees, totaling about 2,000 in total. So all of that is going to happen over the course of the next 3 days. President Trump himself saying that he would like to be in the region for the release of those hostages. He said that he will most likely be traveling to Israel at some point over the weekend, perhaps the beginning of next week. There's also talk about him addressing the Knesset there and then potentially traveling on to Egypt afterwards. So all of this is to say that personally, President Trump was very vested in this process. We saw those images of Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff sitting next to the Israeli prime minister throughout the course of that cabinet vote, and really just testament to how much and how keen the president was to get this over the line. And it still is a breakthrough moment in diplomacy, but many questions still remain about the longer-term governance of Gaza, the disarmament of Hamas, and, of course, some of those key questions about how far the Israeli forces are going to be withdrawing eventually.
Absolutely. Jumana, thank you. That is Bloomberg Horizons anchor Jumana Bersecci. Let's get the view from Washington now. We have Bloomberg's Kasia Klimashinska joining us. So, Kasia, the president is due to leave for Israel, and he seems to be very pleased. Does he have, the optimism that phase 2 will go as well?
Hello. So President Trump is hoping to leave the U.S. on Sunday to be there on hand for the release of hostages, perhaps on Monday or Tuesday. He's very happy about this progress, about this agreement. Yesterday at the cabinet meeting, he thanked the leaders in the region, so the leaders of Egypt, Qatar, Turkey. He even mentioned Indonesia, and indeed he hopes to be in Israel and then go to Egypt for the signing ceremony. Now, yesterday, some White House officials briefed reporters on the details of this agreement, and they did point out that there are 2 stages, 2 phases, with perhaps the second phase being much more tricky, with a lot of things that could still go wrong. Nevertheless, now the Trump administration is focused on the progress. Yesterday, a lot of cabinet members congratulated President Trump on this major accomplishment. They pointed out that now with this a strong coalition in the Middle East, perhaps President Trump could use this leverage, especially in the energy sector, to focus on the next big conflict, which is Russia's war in Ukraine.
Absolutely. Keep the momentum going, as it were. Elsewhere, the U.S. Treasury set up that $20 billion currency swap framework that is now done, but it also bought Argentinian pesos. Is this very unconventional? What was the story here? Was it a unilateral decision by Scott Bessent?
A major move here, but again, ahead of a meeting of President Trump and his counterpart in Argentina, Javier Milei. President Trump and Milei are very close. They already spoke last month in New York on the sidelines of the UN meeting, and that's where this aid came from. So Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent spent a lot of time talking to his Argentinian counterpart, and they came up with this framework, with this solution that led to this $20 billion currency swap line, and U.S. Treasury intervening directly in the currency markets to buy peso, and successfully they managed to stop the decline in the currency, at least in the short term.
And Kasia, it looks like we might actually get CPI data at some point by the end of the month. The BLS is recalling staff. It has to, though, right? Can you give us more detail?
We are now in the 10th day of this government shutdown, which means that all the non-essential activities of the government have been frozen. That includes collection and release of economic data. But the CPI data, the inflation data for September, is really necessary in order to determine the social security payments for next year. And so the BLS, the unit of the Labor Department, is calling some people back in order to put together this report, hopefully by the end of the month. So it will be ready not only for the Social Security, but perhaps also for the Federal Reserve, which is meeting at the end of October.
Yeah, absolutely. Kasia, thank you so much. Bloomberg's Kasia Klimashinska in Washington. Now to other top stories trending on the terminal this morning. The collapse of auto parts supplier First Brands has dragged Japanese financial giant Norinchukin Bank into the debt mess. First Brands bankruptcy has left factories and distribution centres on the hook for more than $10 billion to some of Wall Street's biggest firms like Jefferies, UBS and Millennium. Bridgewater Associates founder Ray Dalio once again warns that U.S. government debt is rising too quickly, and that's fueling a climate, quote, that's very much analogous to the years before World War II. Dalio also told Bloomberg that civil war is brewing in the U.S. For more on Dalio's comments, tune in to the latest episodes of Leaders with Francine Lacroix, airing tonight on Bloomberg TV at 7 p.m. New York time. You can also, of course, watch it on the website and on the Bloomberg terminal. Maria Corina Machado of Venezuela wins the Nobel Peace Prize for 2025. The committee noted her, quote, tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela and for her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy. Coming up, Presidents Trump and Xi maneuver for leverage ahead of their summit later this month. More on this story next. This is Bloomberg. Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping are battling for leverage ahead of their upcoming meeting, with the expiration of a U.S.-China trade truce looming. Joining us now with the latest is Bloomberg's trade czar, Brendan Murray. Brendan, just a few moments ago, a CCTV headline that China is probing Qualcomm for monopolistic behavior. This is a little bit out of the blue, right? Talk to us about all of these things that are cropping up day after day.
Yeah, exactly. Things are really heating up here at the 30-day mark before the ceasefire on tariffs between the U.S. and China expires. They're going to have to push that out further, delay the reimposition of those tariffs. And what we're seeing are both sides really trying to assemble the best hand that they can to bring to the table as leverage. With the Qualcomm issue is one of these examples where China can make life miserable for U.S. companies. The regulators just go knock on their door and start asking questions, and that can hurt the business of American companies in China. The U.S. is trying to do similar things with restricting exports to China that China needs, things like routers, high-tech gear, sophisticated AI chips, and those kinds of things. And what we have are really both sides trying to get the upper hand and bring things to the table that they can then offer to take off in exchange for relief from the other side. So it's all shaping up to be a pretty interesting meeting if it does come together between Presidents Trump and Xi at the APEC meeting in Korea later this month.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you mentioned some of it, but it's affecting so many sectors now. Sweeping new curbs on rare earths yesterday, and still no purchases of soybeans on the part of Beijing. Is it possible that only one or two of these things will get resolved or semi-resolved later this month, or could we see an actual breakthrough?
Yeah, it's hard to see some kind of grand deal coming together over the short term in the next several weeks. President Trump really wants to put something together, so you would imagine things like the 25% fentanyl tariffs would be on the table for discussion to get some of those concessions from China. But this is the jockeying that we're seeing right now, is that trying to apply as much pressure on each other as they can.
Brendan, thank you so much. That is Trade Czar Bloomberg's Brendan Murray. Coming up, French political drama. President Emmanuel Macron is expected to appoint a new prime minister sometime today. More next. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Brief. I'm Bonnie Quinn in New York. Time now for your front page news. First up on the Financial Times, China launching a customs crackdown on NVIDIA AI chips. Teams of customs officers have been mobilized at major ports across the country in the past few weeks to carry out stringent checks on semiconductor shipments. Next up on the Wall Street Journal, a blow for President Trump's efforts to use troops in Chicago. A federal judge blocked the president from deploying National Guard members to Illinois for 2 weeks, saying that continuing to militarize the response to local protests was likely to cause civil unrest. And on the New York Times, New York Attorney General Letitia James being indicted on bank fraud charges. The indictment alleges that James falsely represented a Norfolk, Virginia property she bought in 2020 would be used as a secondary residence when she actually used it as an investment property. Now, over in France, President Macron says he'll name a new prime minister by tonight, having avoided the need to call a snap election. Joining us now is Jean Dalbard of Bloomberg Economics. So, Jean, who actually is in the running? Can Macron find someone that will keep markets calm and the economy on a sound footing?
Well, that's the key question, and President Macron is meeting party leaders this afternoon in Paris, and we would expect someone to be appointed as Prime Minister tonight, potentially a figure from the center-left or someone with such kind of a technocratic profile could be appointed. But after that, I mean, the main difficulty is still the same. He would need to form a government with political parties that struggle to compromise, and with a current ruling coalition which is imploding. So the challenges remain unchanged for the potential new prime minister that we expect tonight.
Yeah, I mean, the OAT bund spread has come in, but we're still at 82 basis points. That's where we were before all of this started. It's not great, right? If it is somebody from the Socialist Party, and if that party is becoming a little more influential now, what kind of policy changes could we see?
So indeed, the Socialist Party, which is the centre-left party in France, remains the kingmaker for the government and for the budget. And this time they have much more leverage than before. And they would like, they have two main points in their economic platform. The first one is the suspension of the pension reform, which in our view will cost 0.3 point of deficit in 2026 and 2027, so it will be costly. And the second point is a new wealth tax that would be, in our view, not a game changer from a fiscal perspective nor from an inequality perspective. But all in all, we would expect that with the socialists on board, the fiscal consolidation for next year's budget will be substantially watered down compared to the previous budget proposal from the former PM.
All right, Jean, we have to leave it there, but we'll be keeping an eye out for that new name. That is Jean Dalbert of Bloomberg Economics. Let's take a look at these markets because we've had 2 up days and 2 down days so far this week. Futures look to be pointed higher fractionally now for the S&P. The dollar index down just a little bit as we are seeing some yen strengthening today as that ruling coalition just falls apart in real time right now. It's happening in Japan. The 10-year yield down 2 basis points to 4.11. This is Bloomberg. It's 5:30 a.m. in New York City. Good morning, I'm Bonnie Quinn with your Bloomberg Brief. Here's what you need to know. Japan's ruling coalition collapses. Japanese assets whipsaw in a major setback for the new LDP leader. Israel's cabinet backs that Gaza deal, paving the way for the release of hostages held in Gaza. Future is pointing to gains in the U.S. after perhaps a less enthusiastic week. The dollar snapping its 4-day rally. Investors digesting international headlines. So let's take a look at where we stand now because those futures are pointed higher, both for the Nasdaq and the S&P. Those 2 indices are higher on the week, even though we've had 2 up days and 2 down days. Now we have gold back below 4,000, a little more calm in the market. The VIX is also showing a little more calm. It is at 16 and change right now. Let's take a look at yields. Little bit of flattening. We have the 2-year at 357.85. The 30-year yield, though, down 3 basis points at 469. 2 basis points there on the 10-year after that middling demand for that auction sent yields just a tiny bit higher yesterday. So not too much movement in U.S. yields. Elsewhere, we're seeing the French-German spread come in just a little bit. If we take a look at the yen, it has strengthened after that ruling party coalition collapsed. 152.77 is where we're at, but we're still not that far from 153. And there you can see the price of gold just very slightly below $4,000 an ounce. So let's get to some individual movers to watch now. Over in London, we have Valerie Teitel. Valerie.
Good morning, Ivani. Let's start with some earnings. We got some out from Levi after the bell yesterday. It is disappointing investors. Those Levi shares are down over 6.5% so far in pre-market trade. Yes, they did raise their guidance. They did sound more rosy on sales, but it was a disappointment around their tariff outlook. They guided that they are assuming a higher tariff rate from shipments ex-China. So I think investors are worried about Levi's imports ahead of the busy holiday season, potentially having more of a tariff impact to the company's bottom line. Let's move over to the tech space. This is an issue with Qualcomm I want to bring up. Qualcomm shares down 2.2%. This comes after an announcement from China that they've entered into an antitrust probe of Qualcomm's acquisition of Autotalks they made previously in the year. And Vani, this chimes very much with what they announced about NVIDIA also investigating an acquisition of theirs on an anti-monopoly case. So it does seem like China, at least at the moment, is ramping up pressure on the U.S. administration ahead of these supposed talks between Xi and Trump to take place in Asia later this month. Lastly, let's end in the rare earth space. This one also having issues, having a tie with China, should I say. The U.S. is trying to combat China's dominance in the sector, and it's all about who the U.S. government could potentially take a equity stake in next. Critical metals up another 11.5%. The stock has flown over 80% this week on speculation the U.S. government could be eyeing critical metals for its next equity stake. Bonnie?
Fascinating, Valerie. Thank you so much. That is Valerie Teitel there in London. Keep calm and buy tech. That's according to Maria Veitmane of State Street Global Markets, who writes, "We believe that the time to rotate out of IT would be when and only when we see improving earnings outlooks in other sectors or regions." Maria is Senior Multi-Asset Strategist and Head of Equity Research at State Street Global Markets, and she joins us now. Maria, you see those headlines, the most recent one about Qualcomm, but you also have, China inspecting containers at ports for NVIDIA chips and so on. Does it not make you nervous about keeping calm and buying tech?
I mean, at current valuation, at current investor positioning, any news in tech obviously makes us like concerned and worried. But I think the message is, as I said, it's very easy to sell out of tech, and investors have tried to do it a few times this year, but you need to have a good place to go to. And that's where the problems are. That's our concern. We don't see any earnings growth outside technology sector, any kind of strong earnings growth outside technology sector. And that's why investors kind of gravitate back towards the sector. And that's what we see in our institutional investor flow in State Street custodial database. Any dip is met in tech is met by buying. Investors go back to tech. That's the key trade for them. That they're sticking with it.
Is it wise, though? I mean, couldn't we be maybe a little bit more responsible this time around if there is something looming? You mentioned State Street flow data, but we also had Bank of America flow data saying that cash funds in the last week drew nearly $73 billion. Stocks drew $20 billion. So there is some rotation into cash.
Yeah, we see, it's really interesting. So we see allocation to stocks at historical high levels. We have to really go back to like pre-GFC levels to see higher allocation to stocks, while allocation to cash is about average. So it's not like that investors are just gung-ho. And obviously we see like alternative assets like gold, for example, doing really, really well. So it's almost like a barbell. So within equities, it's very much tech, very little else. But investors do hedge. As you said, like cash allocations are there, gold allocations are there. It's just like not broadening. I think that's the issue for investors.
When will be the quarter that we do see a little bit of outperformance from sectors that are not tech?
Yeah, very good questions. We're still waiting. I think analysts expected consistently over the last couple of years it would be broadening. Actually, if you look at current projections for Q3, they still have that trade. So the consensus expectation for tech is coming down a little bit from previous quarters, and everything else is coming up. So again, the analysts are kind of expecting that broadening. I have to say I'm quite skeptical, but we'll see. We'll see in a couple of weeks' time.
Now, within tech, where would you still be buying? So if you're in, you're going to stay in. But if you haven't been in, or if you want to, have a look at other areas of tech, what are the more attractive areas now?
Yeah, that's a really, really, really difficult question. But I think you really have to stay with profitable tech. So, there are, the debates about where is the bubble. I think that's very fair. So staying with more profitable tech, staying with companies with better cash flows, with better margins. So that's an areas where I see, yes, no question, they're crowded, they're expensive, but that the reason why people are gravitate towards them is their kind of underlying strengths and a kind of first ability to monetize that AI SIM. So yeah, profitable tech is our preferred.
One of the observations you've been making, and so have many, is that, value stocks have been underperforming, and you say this is very unsettling. Why is it unsettling? Perhaps it's not value's time yet.
Yeah, I think if we just said that value is like underperforming this year, it would be fine. But the chart I have is that value has underperformed for over a decade now, and that's really unsettling to us. All kind of your study of financial theory, you buy low, sell high, find undervalued companies, invest them, kind of understand that. The other thing that worries me a lot is this idea that what we see in our custodial database, institutional investors have this enormous underweight in value stock. So it's almost like it's not like just underperformance, but it feels like investors given up on value stocks. And what they're doing is chasing momentum, chasing earnings. For now, it serves them really well. And as I said, I suspect the reason for that is a kind of narrowness of earnings. That's what investors are doing. But long term, that's a concern. That's something we are watching very carefully.
For sure. You know, you also mentioned China and that it's increasingly on your radar. And I'm not surprised because if you look at some of the indices, they are up massively. HS Tech this year alone up 40%. HS Healthcare up 86% this year. What changed to make China investable again? And does it continue to see gains?
Yes, I think you're very right to formulate your question. Is it investable again? I mean, we know that for many, many years, Chinese earnings really struggled, and a lot of it is kind of regulatory, kind of structural, and earnings expectations are still not great. I think that's kind of the main driver that kind of I'm excited about in technology stocks and kind of this growth stocks and quality stocks is the underlying strong earnings. China doesn't have that, and Chinese authorities really try to stimulate it. So far, they're more focused on kind of stimulating financial markets, and that's what the result is. We haven't seen like huge kind of improvement in underlying corporate profitability. But I think important point to note is that large foreign investors have not really participated in that rally. It was mostly kind of domestic institutions driving it. And seeing the performance, of course, it's kind of important for foreign investors and kind of benchmarked investors to get into this market. So we're seeing kind of this kind of closing of the underweight position in China. I personally would be a bit skeptical about them going overweight, but for now there is a room to add to kind of in terms of close underweight, which is actually quite painful for them. So we expect this kind of tactical outperformance of Asian stocks to continue.
Maria, thank you. Pleasure speaking with you this morning. That is State Street's Marija Veitmane. Now to other top stories trending on the terminal this morning. Japan's decades-old ruling coalition collapses after political party Komeito withdrew its support for Sanae Takaichi's Liberal Democratic Party. The coalition ended after the two sides failed to overcome differences on political funding regulation. The collapse of auto parts supplier First Brands has dragged Japanese financial giant Norinchuchin Bank into the debt mess. First Brands' bankruptcy has left factories and distribution centres on the hook for more than $10 billion to some of Wall Street's biggest firms like Jefferies, UBS and Millennium. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado wins the Nobel Peace Prize for 2025. The committee noted her, quote, tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela and for her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy. Coming up, keeping an eye on chip stocks as China investigates Qualcomm and launches a customs crackdown on Nvidia chips. This is Bloomberg. President Trump says he'll travel to Israel after the Israeli government approved a deal for Hamas to release its remaining hostages in Gaza in exchange for more than 2,000 prisoners. The president spoke about the breakthrough.
Peace in the Middle East. We secured the release of all of the remaining hostages, and they should be released on Monday or Tuesday. Getting them is a complicated process. I'd rather not tell you what they have to do to get them. There are places you don't want to be. But we are getting the hostages back on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, and that'll be a day of joy. I'm going to try and make a trip over. We're going to try and get over there.
For more, Bloomberg Horizons anchor Jumana Brzezinski joins us now from Dubai. So, Jumana, walk us through the latest now that the ceasefire has gone into effect.
Yeah, well, the latest development suggests that the ceasefire actually went into effect at 12 p.m. local time. This follows on from the Israeli cabinet voting in favor to move ahead with phase one of the plan. And the IDF are now saying that the troops have been positioning along this updated deployment line. That is the line that is stipulated in that 20-point Gaza peace plan. And of course, it still allows for Israel to maintain control of about 53% of the strip. Now, the first phase of the peace plan also entails the release of hostages that is expected to happen over the course of the next 72 hours possibly Sunday, even Monday, is what President Trump was referring to, in exchange for around 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees. Later today, it is expected that the Israeli side will be releasing the names of exactly who is on that list. That was a big point of contention when those negotiations were underway. But President Trump himself has said that he would like to be in Israel, coinciding with the timing of the release of the hostages. He has also said that he may be looking to address the Knesset. The latest reporting suggests that he may be arriving to the region as soon as the end of the weekend, perhaps on Monday, and then maybe continuing on to Egypt as well. So a lot is yet to happen operationally in the next 72 hours with regards to the IDF redeployment, the exchange of the hostages for those prisoners. But ultimately, some of the bigger picture questions remain vis-a-vis Hamas disarmament, whether there's an enforcement mechanism for that, in addition to future questions around the governance of Gaza and what exactly that apolitical Palestinian committee, as stipulated in the peace plan, actually looks like in practice.
And we just got headlines a few minutes ago, the IDF warning Gaza residents from approaching the Rafah border crossing, troops positioning along the updated deployment line. What about aid, Jumana? What do we know about the distribution and entry of humanitarian aid now into the Strip?
Yeah, so very important to raise that because it is actually a key clause included in the first phase of this Gaza peace plan, the resumption of humanitarian aid and the return of food and water and medicine and necessary supplies back to the enclave. This is a region and a population that has been suffering from malnutrition and in some cases extreme famine. So the United Nations has said that they're readying a plan. Tom Fletcher, who is the coordinator for the region, says that they're mobilizing up to 170,000 metric tons of supplies. That includes medicine and food that they're very capable of mobilizing into the region. And in addition to that, he's also talked about a 60-day plan that would allow for setting up facilities so that people can get access to these supplies, learning centers for children who've been not had access to school over the last couple of years. And then also setting up centers whereby people can get access to water, again, that has become in short supply in the Gaza enclave. So there's going to be a lot of focus on that in the coming days, the coming weeks. And then alongside that, there's also going to be a focus on maintaining what is known as the security force. And yesterday, the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, said that the U.S. are actually willing to deploy 200 troops to monitor the ceasefire and ensure a smooth implementation over the next couple of weeks.
Jumana, thank you so much. That is Bloomberg Horizon's anchor, Jumana Brzezinski in Dubai. Let's get the view from Washington now with Bloomberg's Kasia Klimashinska. Kasia, the president is expected then to go to Israel and address the Knesset, and then it will be on to phase two. Will there be as much momentum for phase two?
President Trump is getting ready to depart from the U.S. here maybe as early as Sunday. He's very eager to be there on site to greet the released hostages. He wants to address Knesset, perhaps be there in Egypt for the signing ceremony. But yes, this deal has two phases. So the phase one is the release of hostages, a very important one. But the second one that the U.S. officials described as an almost permanent ceasefire. And of course, there is a lot of things that can go wrong there. Nevertheless, the Trump administration is very optimistic. It wants to build on this momentum, perhaps expand the Abraham Accords that were signed during President Trump's first term.
I want to move to Argentina because we knew that there was a swap line that was about to be set up that has now officially been set up. But also we know that the U.S. Treasury bought Argentinian pesos and the peso strengthened off the back of that. So the U.S. intervening basically in the Argentinian currency market. Has this ever happened before? Was it a Scott Bessent decision?
A really big move here, especially coming ahead of the elections in Argentina later this month and before the meeting between President Trump and Javier Milei. Milei is a close ally of Trump, and this action was discussed when the two leaders met here in New York last month. And then Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent had multiple conversations with his Argentinian counterparts. Argentina also spoke to the IMF. So this move was in works, very discussed, analyzed, and yesterday the U.S. Treasury not only finalized this framework, this $20 billion framework, but also intervened in the currency markets, buying pesos successfully, managing to stop the decline in the currency for at least for now.
We'll see what happens next. Kasia, thank you so much. Kasia Kimishinska in Washington. In tech news, shares of Qualcomm are falling in pre-market trading as China opens an antitrust investigation of the US chipmaker's acquisition of Autotalks. Now, this news comes on the heels of the Financial Times reporting that China has launched a customs crackdown on NVIDIA AI chips to wean the company's technology away from Chinese products. Joining us now is Tom McKenzie, host of Bloomberg Tech Europe. So 2 more rounds of poking the bear, if you like, Tom. How concerning is it that China is now opening an investigation, according to CCTV, into Qualcomm?
Yeah, so as you say, according to Chinese state media, this is a probe and investigation into Qualcomm into whether or not they violated the anti-monopoly law in China related to that takeover of Autotalks, which happened back in June, in the summer, of course, of this year as well. The context in terms of the market for Qualcomm, 45% of that company's revenues come from China and Hong Kong. You compare that to about 25% for the United States. So that is the size and scope of the Chinese market and the importance of the Chinese market for Qualcomm, which of course supplies the chips that go into smartphones, iPhones and Samsung phones as well. And that is the biggest slice of revenue for them. They also supply into autos and the Internet of Things space as well. But it should be put in that context, of course, Vonnie, in terms of the potential meeting between the 2 presidents. This is a China that's ratcheting it up in terms of the pressure points on the US and trying to give themselves more leverage, frankly, in those conversations. And so you pair that with the reporting from the Financial Times that there are now these inspectors at major ports in the US looking at shipments of NVIDIA chips and AMD chips into the Chinese market, putting pressure, again, on those domestic firms in China. They've jawboned them in terms of trying to pressure them to walk away from purchases of US GPUs and tried to get them to buy more chips from Huawei. Now it seems they're putting those inspectors in place at ports to really ramp up the pressure on those domestic firms. At a time we're also hearing and reports that they're adding fees to docking of US ships into US ports as well. So all of these measures, I think, should be put in that context. This is China trying to get more leverage.
Finding every avenue available, it would seem. Tom, thank you so much. Tom McKenzie is host of Bloomberg Tech Europe. Coming up, we're going to get you set up for your trading day, your Friday trading day. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Brief. I'm Bonnie Quinn in New York. Now a look at what's ahead for your Friday trading session. Chicago Fed President Austin Goolsbee is speaking at 9:45 Eastern. Plus, we do get University of Michigan sentiment data for October. That's at 10 a.m. Eastern. And President Trump makes an announcement at 5 p.m. Eastern. So we'll be keeping an eye out for all of those events. Plus, maybe a little relief that the BLS is calling back people to get those inflation data out by the end of the month. Let's take a look at some micro movers now pre-market. Qualcomm down after China is probing the company for suspected violation of its anti-monopoly laws. Levi's down almost 7%, even though it beat in the third quarter, but it did warn it's starting to feel the pain of tariffs, and investors are getting jittery about that stock. The surge in critical metals continues. If you bought it last Friday, you'd be up 86%, and that's even before today. And this is even with the White House saying, we're not looking at a stake in critical minerals. Clearly, the market doesn't believe it, and that stock is up in the pre-market by more than 11%. As for the macro picture, we have turned negative. Just a warning, we were positive for most of the rest of the morning for futures. It's been 2 up days, 2 down days. You can roll a die. The US dollar index down about 0.1%, and gold back below $4,000 an ounce. Just maybe, I don't know if I'd call it a little bit of relief. We'll see how the day trades. But that is it for Bloomberg Relief. Bloomberg Brief even. Surveillance continues the conversation. This is Bloomberg.